Have you ever felt that unmistakable sensation of being watched? That prickle on the back of your neck when you're home alone, convinced that someone or something is there with you? Today, I'm going to share 3 bone-chilling true stories that will make you question whether you're ever truly alone. But before we dive into today's terrifying tales, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, you've come to the right place, because that's all we do here. And we upload new videos every week. So if that's of interest to you, please take a moment to obliterate that like button with a sledgehammer, then bury it in your backyard at exactly midnight. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Alright, let's get into today's stories. Our first story takes place in a small suburban neighborhood in Ohio, where a 26-year-old woman named Sarah had just moved into her first home. It was a modest 2-bedroom house, perfect for a young professional starting out on her own. Sarah had been living there for about 3 weeks when the strange occurrences began. It started with small things, items that weren't where she'd left them, doors she was certain she'd closed that were suddenly open. At first, she chalked it up to forgetfulness or the stress of her new job. But one rainy night in March, everything changed. Sarah had fallen asleep on her couch while watching a movie. Around 3 a.m., she woke up to what she thought was the sound of footsteps in her kitchen. The rain was coming down hard outside, pounding against her windows, and thunder occasionally rumbled in the distance. She sat up, listening intently. The house was dark except for the blue glow of the TV. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of rain. Then she heard it again, a distinct footstep, followed by the subtle creak of her kitchen floorboard, the one right by the refrigerator that always announced itself when stepped on. Sarah's heart began racing. She lived alone. There shouldn't be anyone else in the house. She reached for her phone, ready to call 911, when suddenly the footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying than the footsteps themselves. Gathering her courage, Sarah called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" Her voice sounded small and frightened even to her own ears. No response. Slowly, she stood up and reached for the nearest weapon she could find, a heavy decorative vase from her coffee table. With trembling hands, she turned on the living room light and cautiously made her way toward the kitchen. The kitchen was empty. No signs of forced entry, no open windows, nothing out of place. Sarah checked every room in the house, every closet, under every bed. Nothing. Convinced she must have been dreaming, Sarah decided to go back to sleep, this time in her bedroom with the door locked. She was just drifting off when her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her neighbor across the street. "Hey, just checking if everything's okay? Saw someone walking around your backyard with a flashlight about 20 minutes ago. Thought it might be you, but wanted to make sure." Sarah's blood ran cold. She hadn't been outside all night. She immediately called the police, who arrived within minutes. They searched the property and found muddy footprints leading from her back door, around the house, and to her bedroom window. The screen had been carefully removed and was leaning against the side of the house. But the most disturbing discovery came the next day, when Sarah was cleaning up. Under her couch, where she had been sleeping, she found a small plastic bag containing a lock of her own hair, snipped from her head while she slept, along with several Polaroid photos of her sleeping on different nights. Someone had been in her house not just that night, but many times before, watching her sleep. Sarah never spent another night in that house. The intruder was never caught, and to this day, she sleeps with a security system, a baseball bat, and her doors triple locked. Our second story comes from a college student named Mike, who was renting an old Victorian house with 3 roommates in a small town in Massachusetts. The house was over 100 years old, with all the character and quirks you'd expect: creaky floorboards, drafty windows, and a basement that none of the roommates particularly liked to visit. It was unfinished, with a dirt floor in some areas, stone walls, and a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling that cast more shadows than light. Mike and his roommates had been living in the house for about 6 months when they began noticing strange things. Food would go missing from the refrigerator overnight. Items would disappear, only to reappear days later in odd places. They initially blamed each other, leading to some tension in the house. Then one night, Mike was up late, studying for a final exam. Around 2 a.m., he went to the kitchen for a snack and heard a faint scratching sound coming from the basement door. Thinking it might be mice, he approached the door and put his ear against it. The scratching stopped immediately, replaced by what sounded like heavy breathing on the other side of the door. Mike froze. That was no mouse. He backed away slowly, then ran upstairs to wake his roommate Tom. Together, they armed themselves with baseball bats and cautiously approached the basement door. The breathing sound was gone, but they could hear faint movement below. "Hello?" Mike called out, his voice shaking. "Is someone down there?" Silence. Mike and Tom looked at each other, then slowly opened the basement door. The stairwell was pitch black. Tom reached in and flipped the light switch, but nothing happened. The bulb must have burned out. Using the flashlights on their phones, they began to descend the stairs, each creaking step announcing their approach to whoever or whatever might be waiting below. When they reached the bottom, their flashlight beams cut through the darkness, revealing the cluttered basement. Everything seemed normal at first glance. Old furniture, boxes of holiday decorations, the washer and dryer in the corner. Then Mike's light caught something in the far corner of the basement. A makeshift living area had been set up behind some stacked boxes. There was a dirty mattress on the floor, surrounded by food wrappers, empty bottles, and, most disturbingly, photographs that had been taken from around their house, including several of Mike and his roommates sleeping. Before they could process what they were seeing, they heard a noise from behind the furnace. A figure darted out from the shadows and bolted up the stairs past them. Mike and Tom ran after the intruder, but by the time they reached the top of the stairs, the front door was open and the person was gone. The police investigation revealed that someone had been living in their basement for at least 2 months. They had been entering and exiting through a small window that had been hidden behind some bushes outside. The intruder had created a copy of the house key, which explained how they were able to move freely throughout the house while the roommates slept. The identity of their unwanted basement tenant was never discovered. Mike and his roommates broke their lease and moved out the following week. Our final story is perhaps the most chilling of all, and it comes from a woman named Rebecca, who was house-sitting for her aunt and uncle in rural Vermont. Their house was beautiful, but isolated, situated on several acres of wooded land, with the nearest neighbor about a mile away. Rebecca was staying there for 2 weeks, while her relatives were on vacation in Europe. The first few days were uneventful. Rebecca enjoyed the peace and quiet, taking long walks during the day and curling up with a book in the evenings. Her aunt and uncle had 2 cats that kept her company, and everything was going smoothly. On the 4th night, Rebecca was awakened around midnight by the sound of the cats hissing downstairs. Thinking they might be fighting, she got up to check on them. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, she noticed both cats were staring intently at the back door, their backs arched and tails puffed up. The moment they saw her, they ran to her, clearly agitated. Rebecca approached the back door cautiously. It was locked, with no signs of tampering. Through the window in the door, she could see the back porch, illuminated by the motion sensor light. There was nothing there. She was about to turn away when she noticed something odd. A single set of footprints in the light dusting of snow that had fallen earlier that evening. They led up to the back door, but strangely, there were no footprints leading away. Rebecca's heart began to race. Someone had walked up to the door and... What? Where had they gone? She quickly checked all the doors and windows in the house, making sure everything was locked. As she was checking the front door, she noticed more footprints, the same ones it seemed, leading up to the front door as well. Again, no footprints leading away. It was as if someone had approached both doors of the house and then simply vanished. Too frightened to go back to sleep, Rebecca called the local police. They arrived about 20 minutes later and searched the property. They found footprints circling the entire house, approaching each ground floor window and door, but never leading away from the house. The officers were baffled, but assured Rebecca they would patrol the area throughout the night. After they left, Rebecca tried to calm herself down. She turned on all the lights in the house and tried to distract herself with TV. Around 3 a.m., exhaustion finally overtook her, and she fell asleep on the couch. She woke up to the sound of her phone ringing. It was one of the officers who had come to the house earlier. "Ms. Rebecca," he said, his voice tense, "I need you to very calmly go to a room with a locking door. Don't turn around. Just go now and call me back when you're safe." Rebecca's blood ran cold. "What's happening?" she whispered. "Please, just do as I say. Don't turn around. Go to a room with a lock right now." Something in his voice made Rebecca comply immediately. Without looking behind her, she got up and walked quickly to her aunt and uncle's bedroom, which had a sturdy lock on the door. Once inside, she locked the door and called the officer back. "I'm in the bedroom now," she said, her voice shaking. "What's going on?" "We've been reviewing the security camera footage from your aunt and uncle's system," the officer explained. "There's someone in the house with you. Has been all night. When we were there earlier, he was hiding in the attic. After we left, the cameras caught him coming down. He's been sitting behind the couch where you were sleeping, just watching you. Our officers are on their way. Stay where you are." Rebecca felt like she might faint. "Where is he now?" she managed to ask. There was a pause on the line. "The last clear image we have is from about 5 minutes ago. He was standing right behind you as you slept." Rebecca heard sirens in the distance, growing louder. Then, from just outside the bedroom door, came the sound of footsteps slowly approaching. The doorknob turned gently, testing the lock. Rebecca held her breath, her eyes fixed on the door, praying it would hold until help arrived. The police arrived moments later and apprehended the intruder, a man who had been recently released from a psychiatric facility and had been living in the woods near the house. He had been watching Rebecca for days, entering the house while she slept and hiding in various places, including the attic and closets. The most disturbing part? The police found a backpack in the attic containing duct tape, rope, and a collection of kitchen knives taken from Rebecca's aunt and uncle's kitchen. These 3 stories remind us that sometimes the most terrifying threats aren't supernatural monsters or ghosts. They're the very real predators who walk among us, watching and waiting for an opportunity. So the next time you're home alone and get that feeling that someone is watching you, well, maybe you should trust your instincts, because sometimes you're not just being paranoid. Sometimes you're right. If you enjoyed today's stories and want to hear more like them, please demolish that like button with a flamethrower and then dance around its smoldering remains. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. If you have a story suggestion, please comment down below. Until next time, remember to check your closets, look under your bed, and maybe consider investing in a good security system. Sleep tight.